Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. This evening, one of the Anagarikas mentioned that a phrase that had been coming up in his mind was the Buddha's instruction to be an island unto yourself. He'd heard it quoted somewhere, and he was wondering whether it was a actual quote of the Buddha, and if so, where it could be found. And yeah, when you hear a quote attributed to the Buddha, even these days, it's very good to wonder, did the Buddha actually say that? Because I've seen at least one calendar of Buddha quotes, and I think probably only 1 out of 6 actually comes from the Pali Canon. And so, yeah, it was like that at the time of the Buddha. It's still like that now. The Buddha gets, perhaps sometimes deliberately, perhaps sometimes not deliberate. People just think that, well, the Buddha would have said something like that. But turns out this one's legit. And I mean, I could already tell by the tone that it was either an exact quote or close to it. So I thought it sounded like it might be in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, so I got the Digha Nikaya, looked it up, and after hunting backwards from the Buddha's death, because he couldn't have said it after he died, I found it. And it's a quote. The Buddha, it occurs just after the Buddha encounters Mara, and Mara says to the Buddha, well, in the beginning, when early on you said you wouldn't, I asked you, why don't you just go away and not teach? And you told me, I won't attain parinibbana until I establish the fourfold assembly, the monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen. And the teaching is well-known and prosperous. And Mara says, "Well, you've done all that. So why don't you attain parinibbana? Go away. Stop bothering me." And for once, the Buddha agrees with Mara. I think this is the only time. I mean, he knows it's Mara, but this is the only time in the Pali Canon that I can remember that the Buddha actually agrees with what Mara has to say. So it says, "Be at rest, evil one. I'll attain parinibbana in something like 3 months." I forget the exact time period. And then there's an earthquake, and the Nanda gets scared and runs to the Buddha. And what's going on? And the Buddha explains that he has renounced the life principle, and he'll realize parinibbana in some amount of time, not long. Ananda gets even more scared, and the Buddha, and this is where the Buddha tells Ananda, be Be a refuge unto yourself. Be an island unto yourself. Dwell with the Dhamma as your refuge. Dwell with the Dhamma as your island. And how does a bhikkhu dwell as a refuge unto himself, with the Dhamma as his refuge, with the Dhamma as his island? And it's one remains focused on the body in and of itself, ardent, alert, and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief with regard to the world. One remains focused on feelings in and of themselves, ardent, alert, and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief with regard to the world. One remains focused on the mind in and of itself, ardent, alert, and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief with regard to the world. One remains focused on mental phenomena, mind objects, dhammas, in and of themselves, ardent, alert, and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world. So that's the Buddha's instruction. That's how one dwells as an island, as a refuge for oneself. And that's exactly what those were the instructions that Ajahn Kaccana began the retreat with, and we're gradually reading through Joseph Goldstein's book about detailing all of those, filling out the details of those. And there's another sutta which the Buddha speaks of these 4 foundations of mindfulness as one's ancestral territory. And certainly in being an American who got moved around from the Midwest multiple times moved around the Midwest multiple times in my childhood, then plunked in Arizona when I was 15, and then soon as I finished what they call high school there and went on to university, my family moved to Houston. So I have nothing like an ancestral territory at all. Now I'm here in England. So there's some resonance there. One's and in a way, in the 21st century, we really need that, because almost, I don't know, maybe I suspect people in England have more of a sense of place, but aside from the Native Americans, few people in America seem to have it, and even the Native Americans got pushed off their land. So the sense of in the 21st century, we need to find our territory within, because outside it's shall we say the outside isn't looking so good. It's not I mean, in a way, human beings, I think we right now we're living in some ways quite an unnatural way. We have, we relate to lots of people, lots of screens, which, if you think about how screens started existing in the 50s, so it's only had 75 years of screens. Before that, there were no screens, none. And nothing. There were shadow puppet plays at the time of the Buddha, a far cry from an iPhone. And It's unsettling, and it's very, very understandably so. We, in some ways, in the monasteries, we have the luxury, or we live more like human beings used to. We have a group, or a tribe, and it's of manageable size. We we know everybody in our group. We spend most of our time in the monastery. There's immense, very strong bonds of trust. And there's a sense of purpose and, a prescribed way we interact with the world. And I think in the past, certainly in the far past, that's how people lived. Small communities, small communities, much simpler lives, straightforward, and if you were fortunate, your tribe had a good leader, and someone you could trust, someone who looked out for the whole group, not just for himself. And a good monastery, those qualities are there. Very hard to find that anywhere else, in other places in the modern world. We live very sort of scattered, disjointed lives. And it's not, I don't know. I don't think anybody thinks we can go back. There's too many people. So, but the Buddha recognized that even that kind of life, what we imagine, maybe it used to be like that, longing for that, even that won't satisfy us. It's not, even that is untrustworthy. Also, we forget, you forget all the good things too. It surprises us. I read out the death of a 16-week-old baby. That's a surprise these days. It doesn't. Whereas in past times, if we would have a community like this would have a dozen dedications like that a year. So it's not like the old. It's not like there's been any time that's been really, really good, really, perfect. And again, the Buddha's teachings are so straightforward, recognizing, idang dukkhaṃ, this is uncomfortable. Human existence isn't easy, and that's intrinsically so. It's ordinary. And the Buddha didn't promise sort of if only you do A, B, C, and D, then we'll turn the world into a place that's actually satisfactory. No promises whatsoever. Again, what the promise is that there is a path to be one's own island, to be one's own refuge. And if you know people who really are their own refuge, then you recognize that they can also, to the extent they have that kind of internal strength, they can be a refuge for others as well. It's when we lack strength internally, we're desperately grasping for other people or things to help us, and that often doesn't help the other people and things. So it's not, looking for a refuge within oneself is not selfish at all. If you find it, you'll be able to be stable and a source of stability for others and an example for them. And so, that sense of, and the first, in terms of all four foundations of mindfulness are important. Mindfulness of the body comes first, and in some ways, serves as the foundation for the rest of them. Lumpur Sucitto once gave the reflection, when we're young, in the beginning of practice, the body serves as the body supports the mind. We need the stability of the mind. The untrained mind goes everywhere, all sorts of desires, and often follows them, whether they're wholesome or not. But then the trained mind, when we're old and the body's falling apart, then the trained mind supports the body. And that's a sense of the path. When we have a healthy body, the ability to practice, then we can find a stability there that the mind lacks. Later on, we'll need the mind to be more stable than the body, because the body starts disintegrating. So, coming back to just the experience of being here. And I must say, I have I get bored easily, and does make it challenging to stay with the body. So that's perhaps why there's so many different reflections one can use. Different reflections may work at different times. Today the reading was about mindfulness of the anatomical parts. I thought, Joseph Goldstein gave a nice, balanced presentation of that. And I can remember the first time I didn't pick that one up right at the beginning, but I remember at one point I read about it and picked up that decided, wow, that sounds like a really neat thing to do. So I went to my kuti and I sat down and I started sort of taking the body apart bit by bit. And I'm usually not very good at visualization, but something clicked this time. It was kind of like, I haven't watched many horror movies, but I imagine that was sort of what it was like, just watching bit of body here, bit of body here, sort of, the imaginary Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And the thing was, is that then it was, wow. I was impressed, because it certainly produced some strong concentration. Because I just never done this before. Quite, whoa. But what I also found was that, unfortunately, I get bored easily. So didn't work. It was not like that. It wasn't as good the second time, and I can't do that anymore. Some people might be able to stick with it. But still, just to recognize, that there is that potential to be very attentive to and very interested in the details of the body's anatomy, and how none of it is particularly None of it is appealing. It's not who we think we are. On the other hand, you just recognize, there's this experience of the body, and that some of the other exercises in the Satipatthana body section are about rather than the sort of external or visual perceptions of it, internal or external, visualizing the body as either taking it apart or watching it decay. Many of them are about another aspect, which is just the internal feeling of the body. What's it like to, particularly mindfulness of breathing, what does it feel like to breathe? And here, mindfulness of breathing, one way to look at mindfulness of breathing is one way to look at breathing is to imagine the lungs as anatomical parts. Ajahn Kaccana Dhamma made a nice slideshow of the 32 parts, and he has, the lungs are sort of pink squishy bellows, lots of blood vessels, lots of little air sacs, and anyway, so you can imagine the pink squishy bellows, but that's not what, that's visual. That's what you get if you dissect a body. However, certainly the direct experience is not pink squishy bellows. It's energized, breathing in sensations, breathing out sensations, and both are forms of mindfulness of the body. Both are useful, and the question for us is, what's useful when? And that's to be discerned for ourselves. There's an incident in the Pali Canon where the Buddha taught unattractiveness for a while, and then he went into retreat, and then some of the monks practiced very diligently and without much reflection, and they ended up becoming disgusted with their bodies and started killing themselves. So the Buddha comes back, and Ananda, the Sangha seems much diminished since and Ananda explains what happened, and then the Buddha calls together the assembly and says, basically, mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, is of great fruit and great benefit. And so he again, the monks didn't understand how to observe skillful and unskillful results, and so it was disastrous. And it's it's useful that such incidents are recorded, because then one knows what not to do, and also one has a more balanced picture of the early years of the Sangha. It wasn't all dozens of disciples getting this or that stage of enlightenment. And even the Buddha seems to have misjudged what would be best for those monks. So just mindfulness of the mindfulness of the body. That groundedness. And then the the other aspect that the Buddha emphasized in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta is that after this encounter with Mara and his instructions to Ananda, he goes on a tour of the countryside, visiting this town and that town, and each time he teaches what are called the 37 Bodhipaka Dhammas. And I don't know if that's canonical or not, but the name, but certainly the 37 are. So this list of 37 is anyway, it's a list of 37. I'm trying to remember the Four Noble Truths is in there, but it's the four right efforts, the four iddhipadas, and then things we know are more familiar with, the five faculties, 5 strengths, 5 faculties, 5 strengths, 7 factors for awakening, Noble Eightfold Path. And all of these are listed in the or many of them are listed in the Satipatthana Sutta as under the category of mindfulness of Dhammas, that last section. And here it's knowing, and that mindfulness of Dhammas is knowing what skillful states to cultivate, what unskillful states to abandon, and how to cultivate these with increasing degrees of skillfulness. And that is, so mindfulness of Dhammas, it's what are the qualities in the mind right now, and how does one apply right effort? And in the teachings of the Noble Eightfold Path, right effort is invariably described as in a fourfold fashion, which is exactly how it shows up in these Bodhipakya Dhammas, and that is the effort to prevent unskillful states from arising, the effort to abandon unskillful states that have arisen, the effort to bring wholesome states into being, and the effort to develop and fulfill wholesome states that have come into being. And this right effort is one of the teachings that the Buddha indicated was categorically true. In other words, it is always appropriate to practice right effort as described in this way. It's applicable to every situation. Wherever we are, it's always useful to consider what's skillful, what's unskillful. What can I do to bring into being what's skillful? What can I do to abandon what's unskillful? And while the details of skillful and unskillful are, it's detailed, the Buddha does give some hints. Most particular, unskillful mind states are accompanied by greed, hatred, delusion. And skillful ones are accompanied by non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. And that's the, or another another way of looking at that is from the factor of right intention is skillful states of mind or unskillful states of mind are accompanied by thoughts of sensuality, thoughts of harming, and thoughts of cruelty. Skillful states of mind are accompanied by thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of goodwill, and thoughts of compassion. In some ways, I think it is useful to remember that delusion element from the three fires, though, because while greed and hatred are relatively easy to find. Again, if one's mindful of the body, one can learn what it feels like to be greedy, what it feels like to be averse. Both of those are going to show up in the body if you're aware. Delusion's a bit more problematic, and this is the thing: is that even when one is quite feeling quite compassionate, one's delusion can cause one to misperceive what would be helpful and do something that is not helpful or less than optimal. So it's good to be aware. Ajahn Chah would say, the mind is a liar and a cheat. Or someone would ask Ajahn Chah more or less the same question. I understand how to, I know what greed is like and I know what hatred is like, but how do I figure out, how do I figure out if I'm deluded? Ajahn Chah said, you're like a man riding on a horse asking, where's the horse? Where's the horse? So that's more of a challenge, and that's where the subtlety of Dhamma practice comes in, to be able, to have the energy and fearlessness to abandon greed and hatred, and the skill and discernment to be able to perceive and abandon delusion. Not easy, but the trouble is there's not much alternative either. The alternative is, I guess, just keep suffering, and that's not so appealing. You don't. This is what the Buddha said. You can't find a refuge outside, and if you want to make a refuge inside, this is what you need to do. And that's. It's not easy, but in a way, it's also realistic. There isn't sort of magic out there that will rescue us. There's a path of practice in here that can make us into that when consistently applied, can make us reliable people. And there's enough reliable people in the world, then things will go okay. And if not, we get pretty bad. And the Buddha doesn't say anything other than that. Learning how to remember this, how to prioritize the practice, how to apply it to our lives. And also, one thing is it's very, very, I haven't mentioned, I guess, it's very, very useful to have wise friendship, because the Buddha recognized that we are social creatures, And we need the support of each other until we're very advanced on the path. And so that's why we have monasteries. The monastic community supports each other, and you can come here and support each other. And people who are being and so much of noble friendship is being able to receive feedback and being able to give it. I've really appreciated how my job is, one of my jobs here is being Anagarika and Samanera mentor, which means it's my job to point things out to the Anagarikas and Samaneras. And I've really appreciated how skillfully they are able to take the feedback that I give them. It's very noticed. And again, if we recognize that it's our actions that will make us reliable people, and that delusion's a real problem, then we will be grateful for people who point out how we might be deluded. Now, sometimes they won't always be right either. And so we have to assess, correct, incorrect, could be either. But our monastic rules actually, they forbid us from sort of snapping back at people who admonish us. We more or less have to say thank you, and say, yep, I'll do, I'll follow what you say. And that's really helpful. Even when it's on really minor things. I mean, I can remember I went to Wat Pah Nanachat for a year in 2011 and 2012, and I came back full of vigor to help out and make a Bayagiri a really, make a Bayagiri a really good monastery. And my task, the first morning chore I got was cleaning the monk's room, which is it's kind of like a combination. There's nothing like it here, but it's both bowl washing area and locker room basically. And it's a laminate floor that looks like wood, and you're supposed to clean those things with Windex and a quickie mop. And there's so many monks coming in and out that every day the floor it needed quickie mopped every day. No doubt about it. And the other trouble is that as soon as you mopped it, the monks would start coming in and stepping on your floor. And if the floor is still wet, it'll get even dirtier. And so in the cabinet there was Windex, and it said it had been diluted 50-50, and it said use this for the floor. I thought, and I noticed, 50-50 dilution doesn't evaporate so quick. It might make sense to use it in low traffic areas, but I noticed, I was experimenting and noticed that the 100% Windex evaporated quicker, and that meant that the floor stayed cleaner, and that seemed like a good idea to me. So I switched to using 100% Windex for the monk's room. But then I got admonished that there had been a community decision that to save resources, they were going to, that all floors were being mopped with half-strength Windex. And so I followed the rules and said, yep, okay, thank you for that. And I hadn't been there for the community decision. I've been away for a year, so didn't know. But yep, and I can remember thinking, gosh, this ends up with a messier monk's room. And maybe the community didn't make such a good decision, but I was able to watch that I got more from watching that than it was really useful, because community made a decision. I'll trust the community here, even though in a way I don't agree with it. I might have, if I'd been there, I might have said a different opinion at the meeting. But I'll just go with what the community said, even though I disagree. And it's good practice. I could feel it, yeah. And so, yeah, just I think I will sort of wrap up here. It's been enough time. And yeah, just reflections on varying degrees of profundity on the Noble Eightfold Path, and what we're doing here, and what the goal is, and some of what the details are. So anything that's useful here, please apply it, see if it works, and if it doesn't seem useful, then put it aside. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu,